I think we're pretty good.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. All right. Well, as I've been doing for a few forums now, I'm going to do the energy boost. So we start out again in this position, our hands roughly 12 inches apart or a little more or less. And you're going to feel the vibration in your fingers, in your palm, either or, doesn't matter. All right. Anyone not feeling it, let me know. Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to start to boost that energy. Anyone not feeling an increase in the vibration? Excuse me. Let me know. Okay. Very good. All right. As I've said before, this is giving you an energy boost, and to maintain this boost, it's best to do your containment regularly. Okay, so we're going to take this energy and we're going to contain this space, form space. You're going to contain your rooms, yourself, as well as your tech, whatever you're using to join the form with. Okay, all right, starting now, we're going to contain all of these things. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay. Welcome to the 10th AsktheChief Forum, the West Coast edition. Excuse me. Today we're going to start out a little bit different. We're going to, I think you got the message that we're going to be reviewing the movie Soul. Normally we do movie reviews during the Women's Forum, but since the request for this movie came from the West Coast, we figured that, and most of you don't make the other forums because of the time difference, and they're so early in the morning, so late at night. So with that, I guess, is there something else that I'm missing?
Not that I know of.
Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to start out basically with a series of questions that have been submitted. Ms. A will read those questions, and as much audience participation as we can possibly get would be good.
Also, for those who didn't submit questions, they can also just share, what their thoughts on to begin if you like.
Yeah, I think you all heard that. That would be good also. Okay.
All right.
All right, so let's get started.
Okay.
I think the first question is, for anyone who wants to start off, is what your interpretation of the movie was. Again, we have a series of questions. I'm sorry, I'm moving a little slow this morning.
Problem. Well, first off, we just wanted to know if anyone had any thoughts right away, and then we'll just get into some of the questions that were submitted and see where we go from there.
Okay. Yeah, basically. All right. So, well, let's prime the pump. Okay. Yeah. Let's see. The first question was.
Okay. So the first question, and thank you for everyone who submitted questions. They're really, really good questions. So for the first question is, in the movie Soul, spirits pick up personalities. How accurate is that in this realm, and do we pick up personalities as we grow, or are we born with them predetermined?
Which, yeah, is a good question, actually. From my experience with dealing with these realms, that in some sense, as a consciousness, everyone is different. Each consciousness comes into existence with its own vibration. In a lot of cases, well, all cases really, that vibration is your signature. So, it's not like, a consciousness factory where everyone gets the same stamp or anything like that. It's everything has a variation to it. So as far as like personalities, the thing about Soul, I felt that it was literally just trying to promote being in this realm as, mhm.
Before we go into this, we should ask them why they chose the movie. Because
Well, I did say that, yeah.
If you tell them your thoughts, they might not share.
Well, yeah, that tends to happen. Anyway, okay, so.
Sorry.
All right, sorry guys, man. This all right, okay.
We were working
First,
until late.
yeah. Short sleep span. So anyway, starting out, what are the thoughts? Again,
as to why?
Yeah, as to why you were either interested in this movie, like this movie, or even refer to this movie. Okay, so.
Hi, Chief. It's Nelly. One thing that I noticed quickly when I saw the movie was the new way of programming, the new age spirituality stuff. Now that everything seems to be shifting into that direction, but also corkscrewing the old program into that, like with the relationship with the main character and his mom and things like that. There were so many like old school programming and tying it into the new age stuff, kind of like so that people won't become aware of the shift too much and just treat it like it's just normal versus actually researching what it is.
Well, very good, very good. Yeah, and I did find that myself very similar to that. That it was literally almost like the questions that you used to ask years ago. Is there other life in the universe? And everything was centered around primarily Earth and nothing else. No suggestions as where consciousness comes from. They mentioned something about new consciousness, but never anything having to do with how these new consciousness come about and so on.
Keisha also.
Yeah, and is Keisha on?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, well, Keisha had also had submitted the movie. Also, I was just curious as to what you found of interest, in the movie.
Yes, I'm here, Chief.
Okay, great.
For me, I guess just seeing the consciousness and the whole thing, like I remember when I saw the movie, I immediately sent it to Nelly because I was like, wow, is this what we've been talking about since I've been working with you? Of course, my mind now is open to everything. So I was like, whoa, okay. So is this kind of really, I thought, is this a good depiction of what your consciousness is once you, I guess, die or leave your physical body? So I kind of, I was just open to them, like, oh wow, maybe is this really what it is, or do you think they added some extra stuff in it that wasn't really accurate? With just smile on your face, I'm assuming so. But yeah.
No, well, good though. No, yeah, again, it's in a sense, it's a really clever little propaganda, and what Shaman Nelly had said that I noticed. Actually, I think one of the questions I was going to ask if anyone found anything that had to do with just basic religion involved in this movie, and then I'll move to to answering and addressing what you just said.
I didn't really feel anything about religion. Maybe when the main character was talking to his mom, but I didn't put religion in it. It was solely just no pun, but it was solely just the consciousness of it and them experience it and him. I felt that this movie was a good eye opener to people who may have been thinking about consciousness or don't even know anything about it. I
Right.
thought even if the information was correct or not, I felt that it was a film that opened people's mind to see something other than what they've been programmed to think about when you pass away, when you die, what happens.
Okay, that was good. Actually, I agreed that well, when I was doing my research on all this stuff and going through, books on New Age, mysticism, and all this over the decades, there were certain books that I came across that just got you to almost like just the door, even if at that, and never got any further. But it did spark more interest. It did spark an attempt to put pieces together much better, to connect with myself and all of that. As far as one of the things I wanted to say, as far as what you were saying, I'm going to go back to what Neo Shamanic was saying, that the movie seemed like they were tacking on to this new age concept. And so it was interesting, especially with the genetics or the racial makeup, usually black folks and in Christianity and so on and so forth. And yeah, the part where he talks to the mom or something, I think she.
Lord knows we need more teachers.
Yeah, Lord knows
But
we
that's
need more.
it.
Yeah, that's basically as far as it went. I mean, but in most cases, I wasn't even raised in the church, and part of that, these certain phrases will come up, like "geez" or "holy this" or whatever, which has become part of Western society now, primarily in the States. So anyway, I felt that they were definitely trying to, I guess, inform, corkscrew, and confuse the audience as to what so-called the afterlife, is, or even coming into what that was about. But before I go too far, I wanted us to get into more questions, so that I don't end up just answering all the questions before we get to the
Chief,
questions.
um,
Yes.
it's Nelly. I felt like the part in the movie that kind of referenced religion a little bit was the fear of death and the fear of the unknown of the afterlife.
Okay. Which I do find with family members who are Christian, and some really staunch Christians who were willing to be really open with me years ago, talking about it, that they have this fear of the unknown, even though it was preached that there's a heaven and there's a hell. And I guess because so many people, the bar is too high for people to feel like they've walked the straight and narrow. So they're afraid, as the uncle was saying, that they're afraid to pass on because their fear of the reality that there actually might be a hell more so than a heaven. So that part, as far as the fear of death, definitely smacks of what I've experienced with certain relatives having to do with religion. And the saying, one the thing that some of the older folks would say was like, everybody wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die, literally. So we're gonna go to. I want to go to I think back to the questions and the following questions, so that we can actually
Yes, continue the flow. But
Yeah.
also in your book, just as a frame of reference, in the book, My Neo Shamanic Journey that Chief wrote, he talks about how if this is the dense realm that Yunavin created, the chicken coop that Chief refers it to, be the those who run the chicken coop would never give you something that is absolutely true. So
Yeah.
as a good rule of thumb, you can know that any movie you see is never going to tell you point blank what's really going on.
Yeah, one of the things with movies and even TV shows and certain folks I've known over the years who watch some of these shows and some these shows on mysticism and so on, they will find something that smacks of truth to them, and it's literally like the confidence scheme. Every time you see certain movies and they give you a little something, it's like finding a little nugget of gold in a lump of poop. So for movies like this and, and so many movies, as Ms. A was saying, they're presenting stories that may seem like it's something having to do with enlightening you on a certain level. This one primarily a comedy, but they were sneakily trying to, in other words, steer the narrative into something that was to me personally, would just confuse anyone. And some of the questions that were submitted basically reflect that there's this confusion as to what to believe and what not to believe. But anyway, yes.
I thought it was interesting that Neo Shamanic shared with me the song that you wrote with the graphics and everything. And it was real interesting to me that your graphics matched the movie of when they were, in their consciousness. And I was like so shocked. I was like, wait a minute. This looks like Chief's visuals for his song. Which was so interesting. Miss A, I don't know if you've seen that or not, but I was like, wow, that's super interesting. But okay.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Also, there was a point where I was like, they're stealing from me or anything, but again, nothing's really, no ideas are really original. Well, I felt mine was original, and the song, I think I put it up, 3 years ago, something like that?
Quite a while ago.
Yeah, quite a while ago, before this movie was even, I'm sure I didn't even know about the movie until like last year. Yeah, probably more than 3 years ago. It's I put it up, a good while ago. So yeah, it was interesting that observation, and because of whatever me and my transition vision, Ms. A was checking it out and describing, certain scenes to me, and it seemed like there were some parallels. But again, I just felt like, well, I was in the business of illustration, design business for decades, and I was one of the top illustrators in New York. And there were times that my work would get, people would try to copy my work, or they take something that I'd done and manipulate it and use it, for like posters and things like that. So the movie industry borrowing, I should say, from other people's creativity, it's not unusual. But if they blatantly copy, that's when you can put a cease and desist order, or something like this. You could basically sue them for whatever stealing. But it wasn't so exactly the same. So it's just basically an influenced idea. It's like music. Music itself is not original because everyone is influenced by it. Anyone can actually make music, so it's not like someone owns that. And that's how it is with just creativity in general.
Is the song you're referring to, Tisha, called Cosmic Ride?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's the one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what was the scene, the landscape scene or something?
The landscaping is very similar it's very colorful, and but also the children, and then how it's like a picture. The characters are very similar in like round X shapes, and then just the way that your character goes to these other young children and gives them what was, like, I'm assuming the yellow things were what you thought were similar to the spark, and then whenever they received the spark grew, and then they went with you and traveled and learned about things first.
Okay.
It's quite interesting.
Thanks for bringing that up, Keisha. That's I hadn't even thought of addressing that. But yeah.
Thank you. So we'll just continue then.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go back to the question that we could in soul spirits pick up personalities. How accurate is that in this realm?
Oh, okay.
Did we pick up? Do we pick up personalities as we grow, or are we born with them predetermined?
Okay. Well, again, there is this desire to simplify things when they're supposedly explaining these types of things. Being that consciousness various expressions, which you would call, can also call lifetimes or past lives or past or previous existences. Personality, consciousness is born with a certain type of personality, but not in the sense of what they had in the movie, where they have some really weird stuff like, this one of these self-absorbed and aloof, and it's like, who needs any of that in the universe, really? So it was almost as though they were touting it as a standard, something that is natural, or even if that should exist or whatever. And I don't know if anyone's dealt with aloof people. They're definitely not a pleasure to deal with. And for me, if it was anything that was very real as far as like something universal, there wouldn't be this type of aggravation. It's almost as though the movie was also talking about just the struggle of being in the human form as being, this is natural, this is just the way it is.
If you
okay.
In the movie, it does say that the soul crushing is left for whenever consciousness go to Earth.
All right, there was a line, something about, in other words, you come into existence and are born into this realm on this planet, and they did say something about soul crushing, literally, and which is almost like saying, well, accept that reality that you're born into this realm, and your soul's going to get crushed, literally.
And we're purposefully sending you there.
Yeah, literally. So, and also, because I don't want to jump the gun on some of the other questions having to do with just the character Soul 22, I think is her name, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that she didn't want to have a human expression. And so they sent all these people to, supposedly, which is, it's a subject of its own, having to do with who they've chosen, all these people, and what, they perceive to be genius and so on and so forth, to convince this person, this soul, to have a human experience. But before we go any further with that, I actually would like to see what the next follow-up question is. So
in Soul, the spirits talk about a spark being needed before being able to come to Earth. Are people born with sparks in this realm, or is that programmed thinking?
And you're going to define it, because I asked, did you get the definition?
Yes, they talked about spark being instead of like a passion, you would say it would just be like enjoying
So it wasn't
the
something.
small moments in life and things like that. And they were purposefully vague.
Yeah, well, New Age vague, really.
Yeah.
True. There was a saying that was tossed around by a guy who was, supposedly doing detox work, where he was called it. It was another term for like being present. What the heck was it?
Present in the moment that they did talk.
Yeah, but they had a term for it that has been thrown around, and I've heard it, but for some reason I can't remember. But it had to do with being aware of every step you take, being aware of it's not being present, but mindfulness. So it's like be aware of every chew, before you swallow and stuff like that. Almost like be aware of every time you blink your eye or something. This kind of nonsense. But where I was going with that, I totally lost track.
So you were talking about how the spark that they were referring to is obviously a dense thing because it's about encouraging you to just accept this realm as reality, and as an optimum expression when it is very much not.
Well, yeah, it's a realm of limits primarily. But again, what Ms. A had mentioned earlier about the chicken coop. So if anyone's looking for any real viable information from this movie, you're not going to get much. But as far as like what Keisha was saying, that it did spark some thought as to what, what does it really look like? What is it really about? How in that sense, I would say, yeah, good. You know, if it's something that will spark some thought. But as far as using it as a guide, you know, definitely do a lot better. You know, reading Dr. Seuss in some ways and actually using this movie as a guide. I think that because we went over some of the questions. We've been up really, really late. I apologize for the fact that I am waking up. Though. I'll be with you in a few. But
well, whenever you were talking about the spark, sometimes there would be like they would focus on the scene like eating pizza for the first time, or like lying down and letting the air blow up, you know, through the vents on the ground in New York, I believe.
All right, when the one character
came through. Or like listening to someone play an instrument. But these are all like when you say, you know, reminiscing is how density keeps you locked in a loop. So it's all about like freezing these moments in your energy and not really moving forward.
Yeah, and also the system programs these, you know, these moments in your memory and tell you that, you know, in other words, they dictate to you that this is what fun is, you know, is standing over. And actually, it was a scene from an old movie with Marilyn Monroe, I think in New York, and it's like a subway grate. She stands there, and you know, the wind blows up in her dress and so on and so forth. They don't mention the fact that, you know, if you've ever lived in New York and you did the subways, which I did for years, they never talk about the wafting of urine coming up through those vents also. So that was really interesting. But anyway, you know, they just basically were literally just selling, staying in the chicken coop. You know, this is the best thing in town. But again, it still was kind of odd because you mentioned that part where they talked about soul crushing, and it's almost like they slipped it in there, and I hadn't even, you know, I totally forgot about that. Because there's a piece of, you know, it's really a piece of, you know, truth there that.
Yeah, even the Jerrys, they said that if they should probably stop putting consciousness through like aloof or self-absorbed. So the Jerrys, and Terry was the one who said, oh, we leave the soul crushing for Earth, because some, like, for example, there's these machines that were in the movie they would send these young consciousness through, and then they would come out aloof or self-absorbed or excitable or all these things that are programs. And then the Jerrys were saying that we should stop putting them through. But then one of the little machines fell on the young consciousness, but they didn't get hurt. They just laughed. And then because Joe Gardner was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And then Terry says, oh, no worries. The soul crushing is left for Earth. It's like, why are you sending them there? They are a good representation of attachments and density. Yeah. They purposefully send consciousness into this realm for soul crushing.
Yeah, which is, you know, that's the weird paradox, just even being here. In one hand, I think I mentioned on another forum when we talked about birthdays, and I stopped really paying attention to birthdays, my birthdays anyway, when I was 18. You know, I just wasn't interested anymore. Because at that time I already felt like, you know, what am I celebrating, you know, this BS, you know, existence. So I called it, you know, Incarceration Day. Again, this guy they're talking about, yeah, you come in and they, you know, and they just destroy you. But then on this, you know, in the other vein, it's just a great ride, though. It's just such a really great ride. And one of the things I would ask people earlier on in sessions would be, how much joy compared to stress do you have in this world? And the stress always will win out. You know, you think about joy, you know, if it was 20%, that would be extremely high. So again, I feel that, yeah, if someone asking questions. No, okay.
Hey, Chief.
Yes.
Hi, it's Ciara.
Oh, hi, Ciara.
Hey, what's going on? I don't have a question, but I wanted to share my perspective with the spark. Like when you prompted the question of like what were our takeaways from the movie, that was something that stood out to me. And I personally feel with the movie and the spark, not saying it's a guide, I think it was a starting point for people who are in this realm to experience it, right? There's a saying that says, life is hard for people who play with it, but life is fun for people who play. Sorry, life is fun for people who play in it. So when we say a spark and you're trying to chase something, you're missing out on being present. Like we were mentioning earlier, like you're missing out on the small things that can add value to your happiness, small things that can show you, the capacity of how you can live your life here in this realm. So that's what I took from that spark, is that you're so busy chasing it that you're missing your life here in this 3D world. Granted, the seeds that are planted in our consciousness takes us to the 4D, the 5D of going forward. So when it comes to the movie, I look at it as just a flat guideline to be here. I don't even attach it to the subconscious or the conscious mind. I just feel like it barely touched that surface, as you guys mentioned. It's laughable when it comes to that aspect of that realm, but for us being here in this area or in this realm, it kind of gave us a sense of being present, and again, using our powers and using the things that are here in front of us to live an authentic, I guess, life, or a comfortable life, and have fun while we're here. Like, have fun doing it, because it's a temporary space in this realm.
Yeah, well, again, it's one of those deals where it's kind of like they give you a compartmentalized view of something. So if everyone is on a similar page, according to this movie, and according to what you're saying, the system doesn't seem to support you having that kind of space to actually enjoy all the small things. If anything, if you think about the amount of noise that goes through a person's head, or even your own, having to do with all these thoughts, what are these bills, what is this, what my career, what's going to happen next year, and so on and so forth. All of these things, literally, they just steamroll over all of that, that time to relax and enjoy and smell the roses. Years ago, yeah, there were definitely, I recall, I've been around long enough to I recall living in rural areas when I was a kid. Outside of other issues around living in certain rural areas, yeah, I enjoyed nature, and to this day, I still enjoy nature. I enjoy, seeing the flowers and all the critters and all that other stuff, smelling the trees and all of that. But in the midst of that, you still have this overlying weight on your shoulders, especially as an adult. When you're a kid, and if you haven't gone through a traumatic experience with the family that you're living with, or just your environment, yeah, when I was a kid, I liked exploration. Lived up in upstate New York, and for my kids, so that they can experience, living out in nature. We moved from Brooklyn up to up to Woodstock. And when they're really, little, my daughter in particular, she was just fascinated with everything. She had that space where she could enjoy until she went to school. So this realm, it doesn't support that. They talk about it, but it doesn't really support it. So, breaking it down and going more into, I would say, the way that I look and I perceive things, and from what I've experienced, and to the point where I trust in what my experiences have been with these other realms, because things fought so hard to try to keep me out of that realm, and it was the system here that was trying to keep me out of that realm. And when we talk about being on the radar, just from your existence. So a movie like this won't talk about anything that goes really that deep, but I appreciate what you're saying. And and the reality is that if you can look at everything in a more of a radial sense of, I have this space that I'm trying to get into so that I can appreciate, all the little moments. But if you're trying to sit there and appreciate all the little moments, depending on where you live also, can interfere with your appreciating every moment. If you want to be quiet, but then there's like all this traffic going on out in the streets and so on and so forth, or you're in an apartment building and your neighbors are screaming and yelling and so on. It's very, very difficult to actually, be in that space. But you can put yourself in a much, I should say, a better place than that even, with an understanding of what this realm is about, and that you have more control if you understand how to basically focus your consciousness. That's why I do all the clearing and so on and so forth. It gets rid of, I should say, a lot of noise. So usually after a certain number of sessions, people who've been with me for a while, they start to feel more clarity, in their head. Instead of this like walking through Grand Central Station, at rush hour, which I remember having, that kind of noise going in through my head for years. But I can't tell you when it stopped because I just got into my own work and worked my way through it. But I can't even tell you when I stopped hearing all the noise in my head. But so that's the one thing that you have to deal with when you're talking about just, trying to be in the moment, trying to enjoy the small things. But awareness, I found, got me a lot further than actually trying to find a little place to, to be, quiet in my own space. The best way to actually really explain it would be you just have to feel it. Yeah.
Would you like to do some muscle testing as to explain the limitations of this expression and how locked down it is? Would that be okay?
Yeah, if anyone's interested, we can do some muscle testing on it. And generally, when I talk about muscle testing, a lot of stuff has to do with what I have downloaded in my own consciousness. Also, primarily too, it has to do with those other consciousness in the universe who know so much more than those who are walking around within this realm, because they can see more from that other realm than the human is designed to be able to see. So, if your eyes are basically manipulated by the system, by basically being born into this realm, you're born into something already constructed or already with its limitations, so that they only want you to experience what they want you to experience. Since it's not a perfect system that they put together, there are people who feel things or see things that they don't even want them to see. So, but we can just get and start asking some of the questions. And
this is just to help with a serious question about this expression and what light beings on the other side, what associates think about this expression.
okay.
It's a lot of.
So
Go ahead.
you can go ahead and read
Okay.
the first question.
So the first question would be, is this life considered the most restrictive expression in the universe?
Okay. Usually, when we get this kind of reaction, those veterans who have, number of sessions, what's going on. It has to do with the things that don't want certain types of information to come out, because ideas equate with energy. How you think changes your vibration. What you accept can lower your vibration. Also, raise your vibration. So, from your question, is this the most locked down, in short, most locked down system in the universe? And I haven't really muscle tested on this. So,
Expression in the universe.
okay, lockdown expression in the universe. So, I'm going to make sure that the arm is working. The other blocking. So with that question, it's like, is this most lockdown expression in the universe? And I said yes on that, which I never really muscle tested on, but I always knew that this was that. I shouldn't say always, but I came to realize that this is the case, amongst other things that that led up to that understanding. But as you're going to say,
Do light beings consider this expression slavery?
do they consider this expressions a form of slavery? They got yes. So, even with what I'm doing right now, we're talking about this movie. Does it tell you that there are, that it is a system where there are things that walk around amongst you that influence every aspect of your day? They don't show that. It's like, it's a comedy. They're trying to be light, trying to be deep at the same time. What you're experiencing here, and there are those who experience it firsthand, what Ms. A is experiencing. A lot of my clients become more empathic, so they actually feel these things. And when I explain to you what's going on, that again, you got this movie. As far as entertainment, it's kind of interesting. But I can't help but look at everything from a Neo Shamanic point of view. Which doesn't take the fun out of it. If it's really well done and the humor is good and whatever, even if the information is not accurate, you can enjoy watching it, but with the understanding not to take everything that they show verbatim. So again, if like Sierra, you're saying that it made you think in terms of just trying to be, I guess, present and to appreciate the smaller things, while you're in this realm that basically is programmed to have you running after the dollar, running after position, and so on and so forth. So that, I don't know. I know that people claim by using meditation that they can get themselves in a space where they don't think about any of this stuff, or they can escape any of this. And I still have, and my issues around the concepts of, meditation. It's not what, I don't think that it gives you what you think, it's supposed to give you. But I do have a question now. Do you use any form of like getting quiet or getting into a meditative state? Nothing wrong with getting into a meditative state, mind you. It's a little bit different from the cross-legged, thing. If you recall any of the past forums, it's actually having some idea of where you want to go and what you want to find. And then again, there are those that if you want answers, you go into a meditative state. Again, very, very complicated. I am going to pull out of that one because the more I talk about it, it feels like I'm getting into a quagmire that I'm creating myself here, just trying to explain it. But do you go into some kind of something, yoga, some kind of exercise or something like that to try to, be in the moment or to appreciate the small things? And this is for you, Sierra.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a meditative state. I will say for me, exercise is my scapegoat. It's something I enjoy doing, and it's a way to be present in that moment to empty my mind. In the morning before I start my day, I do envision how I would like my day to go, right? Just by being present, focusing on like my breathing and being very focal on emptying out my mind. So, like you said earlier, without that rat race of so much happening in your head, it's quieting that moment and telling myself, like, I'm going to have a great day today. And this is how I want my day to look. This is my goal for the day, So I wouldn't just say it's meditation, more of like manifesting a great day, and putting great energy for that moment here again in this realm, and how I can play in this realm and have fun while I'm here is where my mind goes. When I'm trying to empty it out.
Mm-hmm. No, most people when they say something like that, they say, "Well, I'm still working at it. That I'm still trying to get it to that point." Do you feel that you have reached a certain level of that, or you feel that you're still on that road to actually trying to get to that place yourself?
It depends on what I'm looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
My goal in connecting with you and connecting with Nelly is to get to the next space in my spiritual journey, to disconnect from here, right? But at the same token, because I have been a player in this system or in this program, as I would put it, it's finding that way to disconnect from it so I can think and live more freely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good, because one of the things I found with the process that I've come up, I've developed, I guess, lack of a better word for it, is having an awareness of where I am and more of an awareness of what's around me, and then understanding that when I talk about containment and basically your intent and so on and so forth, that for me, I tend to go into teaching that over the concepts of basically just trying to quiet your mind. If you find out where the noise is coming from, you can actually shut it down and start to diminishing all that noise. And what's going on in this realm, you're trying to find peace. And I have clients who have memories of safe places when they were kids. Some sitting in their grandma's kitchen, eating soup or something like that. If they wanted to escape all whatever the stress or whatever at their house, they can show up at grandma's. Or there's other places that kids go or things that they do that would, they find themselves this little enclave, this little space that they feel is a safe space. But one of the things that I talk about, it's good to try to strive for that, but you definitely need information, because what's going on while you're in that quiet space, there's a storm going on outside. It's like you're in this bubble, but inevitably you're going to have to leave that bubble at some point and go back out into that, into the storm. So when you get to the point where you're actually controlling your own environment, you can actually take your environment out into that realm and be less affected by the negativity. So that's what basically containment is about. Containment is to shut out all of the traffic of noise and other aberrant energies. And through even programming, this goes on 24/7. You listen to the radio, you watch TV, you live in the city, you look at, you see billboards, you see all this stuff, all this noise coming at you. So if you can contain your space, which basically keeps all of that noise from in other words, reaching you, and the body naturally absorbs energy because we are energetic, and we're not like hard, like a block of wood with a hard surface or whatever. We basically absorb energy. Even a block of wood absorbs energy, so nothing's really solid. So we're absorbing all that energy. When you're containing, you're actually, in other words, reserving your energy. You still have to deal with the stuff that's gotten in there before you started doing containment, but it's not going to allow anything else to get in that easily to further tox you. So you can get into a quiet place or whatever, but you still have all this going on the outside. But guess what? You have all this stuff going on in the inside. So it's almost like mom needs some quiet time. I'm going to my bedroom. Nobody better mess with me. But she's got to come out of there at some point. So what do? You put your environment in order through containment, through pushing out other people's stuff, giving you a space to actually analyze. I give you a space to analyze what's going on in your life, what's going on around you. And some say, well, that's work. Yeah, it's work. But in the end, it's worthwhile, rather than this concept, if I just get quiet, and try to do this very new agey type of, focus thing, you're not, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work.
Even if you're trying to manifest your day, you're fighting all the attachments inside of you, right, and externally. So it's like you against maybe like 1,000 trying to have a good day.
Yeah. So again, those who had a number of sessions, we find things having to do with people in their lives who are connected to their energy. Family members, old relationships, new relationships, are connected to your energy. And so again, it's like going into a room in your house and being quiet, but never leave. You got to come back out of that room. So if you know where things are coming from, doing containment, you can see after a certain point where things are coming from. The way you think starts to change. You can't think like whatever you're being fed by the system. Again, they don't want you to escape this. They benefit from all of this nonsense. They benefit from what they said in the movie, crushing souls.
If they don't make sure you have a bad day, they can't feed.
Yeah, they have to give you some frustration, something what they call like a bad day, because they feed off of your bad day.
Shit. And someone, is this, there is no other expression in the universe that has noise in the mind like this expression.
Is that correct? So again, this is an anomaly that we're in. And it's similar to a number of sci-fis that you see, and all these movies are basically sanctioned by the system. Every so often they have a little, nugget of something that may be close to the truth. And that's basically like these, they call confidence, these folks who would run these scams, I forgot what they call it, something confidence schemes or something like that, where they give you a piece of something that's real to see if they can hook you with that. And when they feel like they got you hooked, then the flood of nonsense comes in, the flood of lies come in. But because they want everyone linear in their thinking, said, well, they told me the truth, in the beginning, that was right. Can't all be lies. In reality, they get you, in other words, set up with thinking that, okay, these guys are, maybe decent people who told me the truth on this. Then they flood you with the lies, but then there's this difficulty wanting to believe that everything that they're sending you after that point are lies, so you still want to feel, well, maybe half of it's, but the reality of the matter is like, I don't know if you've ever had a friend who really bad at directions. They want to take you to a restaurant that you've never been to, but they know where it's at, and they they can't find the place, or they'll tell you something is, definitely it's this, but then when you go to this place, it isn't. Or they'll tell you something, and half the time it's it's on. But how does that feel? Do you feel like, oh well, if so and so says this is whatever this is, this place is wherever it is, this place opens at a certain time, you'll find yourself not feeling confident about accepting anything that person says, even if it's correct, because half the time it's a lie, or not a lie. Half the time they don't know what they're talking about, or they're confidently telling you, giving you misinformation. And they may think that they know what they're talking about. Again, that goes into something having to do with programming and conscious programming that people run. But anyway.
See, on the website, there's on the Women's Forum page, there's a list of all the movies that we've covered so far, and the Neo Shamanic movie rating system. There's such a thing as PGR, or like programming, how much they're trying to lead you around by the nose. And then NSTHA is how much Neo Shamanic information is in that movie. Would you like to do a live muscle test of Soul 2020 just to see the percentage?
Yeah, because usually the percentage will add up to 100. So let's say so when I pick it up and I see maybe it's like 80%, I could be wrong, 8% programming. It's not quite going down, so I'll go to 90%.
Shit.
So we got 90% programming to basically muddy the waters. So if you're, again, we're explorers. We want to try to learn things from whatever we're looking at. Even if you think you're just there, just leisurely watching a movie, there's a part of you that wants to learn something. Mm-hmm. So you start to take in, all this information, and because there's so many different ways of looking at things, and they represent things in so many different ways, you're not sure, what connects with what's is real and what's and what's fake or what's fantasy.
Okay. If you check out the website on the Women's Forum page, and then you see the percentages, if you watch the movie after you see the percentage, then you can be careful about filtering the information that you're bringing in, and not just opening yourself up to this might be true.
So with that being 90%, that means that there's 10% usefulness in watching it, but you have to watch it from a Neo-Shamanic point of view. Okay, I don't know if someone was going to ask something, but what was the? Okay, we had another question or something that you were going to want to muscle test.
Probably the last question, because it has to do with for now. I hear noises, so I just feel like they're coming. But there's whenever you were talking about this world being lies, and would you like to see if this world is considered a sea of lies? Would you like to muscle test?
Okay. Now the term "sea of lies" came up right after I had gotten tired of trying to get something tangible out of New Age. Because I knew a number of folks who were in it and so on, and I and I got frustrated because I definitely felt it was like a teaser more so than anything that had real substance. And so one of the things that happened in the midst of me trying to find if something's valuable or viable, I kept getting this voice saying, "You live in a sea of lies." So, in other words, they don't like the fact that I'm going to override their block. That literally, this realm is a sea of lies. Of course, it always cursing. So, even in the sense of what goes on today, the fact that all this business around this, this COVID thing, they keep pushing. You know why they push so hard? Because it's taken a lot of people a bit of time to trust that a system that always lies to you is telling you the truth. So, for once, no, it's still a lie. So really, 1 second. Yeah, something was coming up, but go ahead and say.
Well, on the internet, we were looking at informations about the next books that are coming, and one of the things is like, yes, the government is finally gonna spill the beans on aliens and UFOs. I'm like, you're right, okay, that's gonna be very jaded information.
Yeah, even with that, but going back even to the Corona business, there's some, you'll find articles, and one of the cool things that there are a number of articles that have to do with the concept that this isn't what they say it is, this whole deal. And I had said this last year sometime, and I might have even posted it. I'm not sure if I posted it, having to do with certain groups in the United States. Why would you believe what the government has to say when it says it's interested in your welfare? And another fellow had written something recently who literally just repeated what I had talked about over a year ago. He said, "Do you remember the Tuskegee experiment?" And there were just a few others that he listed for certain people of a genetic background. So why would you willingly believe a system that has proven itself to not have your best interest in mind? So they say, "Oh, there's a lot of things that have changed and shifted and so on and so forth." And yeah, I have no doubt. But with this Black matter business and some of these other things. How much has it really changed in totality? Maybe some little, some little gains here and so on and so forth. I know that when I was in my 20s, and they were bringing in affirmative action and all of that because of the way that things were in that, in that country. So why would I believe, not just that it would lie to me because of my genetics, but it lies to everyone, regardless of their genetics. So why would I go and start letting them inject stuff into my body, just on their word? A lot of times they'll say, we're doing this for your good. Oh, we're going over there and we're invading another country. This is for your good. Well, it's never been for your good. It's to see the lies. So anyway, we can get on to the soul questions. Yeah, we can move on to more of the soul questions.
All right. Yeah. Lastly, in this set of questions, in Soul they show a line of spirits going into the great beyond. How accurate is that depiction in the afterlife?
Yeah.
If not, oh sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No.
Oh, if not so accurate, what actually happens when we cross over or pass away? Okay. I probably will have to lay down for this one.
Yeah, just so for verification. Yeah, you can lay down for this one. Yeah, the line of people going into the light, there have been a number of stories over the years where individuals have had near-death experiences, then there's the tunnel of light, and I've addressed some of that in earlier forums about people who say that their family members who've moved on would be at the entrance, telling them, come on, we've been waiting for you and all of that. This one, I think, they were on some kind of conveyor belt or something like that, or a people mover, just moving them into the light. One of the things that was actually, I thought was pretty accurate, though, about that was this guy, he didn't want to go into the light. And years ago, when people started talking about going to light, I said, don't go into the light. They're just being reprocessed and coming back into another BS existence, where you're going to try to make, a good life in a zone that's not designed for one. So he was trying not to go in because, he had this gig that, he'd been waiting for whatever, a gig like this. And then he's, being really clumsy and goofy, and he kills himself. He ends up dying. And he ends up in this line. So he's like, no, I got to do my gig. He's, I think he's even crawling over people trying to get out there. And he's asking, I think he asked one guy.
He's like, why are you in line? And he's like, why not?
Yeah, literally, it said, why are you in line? And why not? What that reminds me of, like slaughterhouses where they have like the cattle going in, they shoot one after the next, to be basically slaughtered. So we talk about linear, staying in line and not even knowing what's in store or what's up ahead. So as far as like, the conveyor belt of light, no, it doesn't really work that way. If anything, when I have dealt with individuals who passed over or transitioned, they're definitely in a space. Sometimes they are in the place that they would consider limbo, depending on what density or how, whether you follow orders or whatever during this lifetime, or whether you cause trouble for them in this lifetime while they're trying to feed. So they'll end up with individuals in limbo. There's a time where they're in a space and it's not, some see structures and buildings and so on and so forth. Whenever I see them walking in the ether, which is it's like this cloudy space. And if I have to retrieve someone, 9 times out of 10, when they move on, density shows up and escorts them to where they want to escort them. And when you're in that state, you're still in some confusion if you're moving on. Some people, they are afraid to move on, so they'll run, and then you'll end up with various levels of ghosts and all this other kind of stuff. But I have seen this light, and I found it ominous when I first saw it. And this was like, maybe 4 decades ago, when I was having regular out-of-body experiences. And because it was ominous, it basically was recycling and recycle your consciousness back into another expression. I think there was a question whether you choose your expression or not. No, in this realm, they choose it for you. They choose where you're going to go. And if they want some verification, is that correct? You got it correct on that.
And they usually put you somewhere where they can get the optimum amount of essence from you or the most misery.
Yeah, so you'll end up in something where, yeah, you optimum stress, terror, all of these things that generate a certain amount of essence for them. It's about feeding. Again, the best way to actually find peace is to buck everything that they've been teaching you.
Is there anything altruistic about this realm?
Anything altruistic about this realm? No. Because this realm is not meant to be altruistic. Again, it's all about feeding primarily. Oops, okay. Did we answer that?
Well,
Is there
there's
anything
more.
after that?
We can ask, if you really want to know, you can ask Eric if that was good enough.
Yeah, was that good enough, Eric, or did you want a little more from it? I can definitely go further with it. Just give me an idea where you want to go.
Oh no, yeah, no, that was really good. It kind of on my end, I got kicked out towards the end. We were answering that last question, but I got the footage, so I can go back. But every other question, I heard the full, and you answered everything that I was wondering.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, we record this so you guys can, review it, download it, and so anything you missed, thanks for letting us know that you got kicked off, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not anything I call as a like a fluke. The stuff that happens during these forums are never flukes. So.
And you escorted several people after they transitioned, so you were able to see visuals of them when they came to the other side. They were disoriented, and they usually had dense entity guards, they looked burly, like muscular for some reason in the visual, and they were like holding on to that individual tightly and like kind of just manhandling, roughing them up and stuff.
Well, sometimes if the person is just, moving along the way they want them to move along, it just literally is just, you follow us and you end up following them into reprocessing is what the system had been set up as. Reprocessing means that they just literally figure out where you're going to go next. And generally, you go back, you come back here. There are those who actually decide, make it difficult for them to get them to come back, and they call them runners. And either consciousness is like, no, I think I got wind of this. I'm not going back into that meat grinder again. But they don't know how to get out of the anomaly. So they end up just basically bouncing around, running around, and basically evading those who are part of the system that I call the density, their job is primarily to make sure that everyone, like all the livestock is put into its cages and the proper situation to get the maximum amount of essence from them, or from us, I guess.
During one of your sessions, there was a guy you picked up, and he was a runner, and he said he gave something to this particular client that he was attached to, and he said he had been running for so long that his energy was just fading and fading, and he said the only way to stay away from density when I ran on the other side is just to keep moving, never stop in one place too long.
Right. Because they literally, similar to the Matrix, it is the Matrix as far as, these other consciousness are concerned in this realm. It's like the Matrix, literally. And the Matrix is like an elaborate hologram, just like this is an elaborate hologram is an elaborate hologram, and they're This is an elaborate hologram. Yeah. The reason they fight so hard is that just thinking that it's possible that this is an elaborate hologram does something to your energy. That you're saying something is possible messes with them. They don't want you to think that anything is possible. You know, the term impossible, comes about just primarily as a catchphrase to keep anyone who's not, let's just say, strong enough to keep searching, to try to get them to stop searching. They say, well, that's impossible. This is impossible, and so on and so forth. And how do they know anything is impossible? They haven't been everywhere there is to be. They haven't been inside of every consciousness there is in the universe. So I don't know what's impossible. It's just another means to keep you stuck in the chicken coop.
You want to see that? Is this realm a continuous VR system for your consciousness?
Is it a continuous VR system?
Like where you can't get out on your own?
Let's see. Okay, well, I agree with that.
Okay, they agree. I wasn't sure if I phrased it good enough.
Yeah.
Or well enough.
Yeah, I didn't know how to actually rephrase that myself. But yeah, this is a continuous VR. So they said, well, it feels real. I said, but have you ever felt anything else other than this? Do you have any recollection of feeling anything else other than this before you came into this room?
Yeah,
So
I felt
yes, go ahead.
yeah, definitely felt the connection, which is what led me here. So it's not just me feeling connected to this realm.
Mm-hmm. So the first part of that, it says it's not, and the last part it says it's not like just being connected to this realm. But what was the first part? Because it seemed like it was breaking up a little bit when you were talking. So if you could speak that.
Okay, now you're going in and out. It's kind of freezing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And again, you get them fighting the muscle test, and you get them messing with, in other words, the connection as much as they can. Before they would just like cut it off, period. They would just end the form, certain earlier forms, and have to recall everybody. But that has to do with, in other words, at this point, the work I do, they don't really hide, like they used to hide, so that someone said, well, maybe he's, what he's talking about is real, but they don't care anymore because I stick with it. I prove that what I'm talking about is real. People who have enough experience, some people have a number of people come, and they're sensitive anyway, and they want to find out what the hell is going on and who are these people who keep harassing me from the other side. So they don't care, anymore, because, I don't care if a person doesn't believe what the heck I have to say. Yeah. But again, think of it as a possibility, the things that it's saying. And they don't even like that. Because you start to think of things not being the way that the system says they are, it means that you're starting to push against their walls and their barriers. And you're going to eventually, if you stick with it, you're going to eventually knock a wall down, and then you're going to see the outside. But there's walls, a number of walls to the outside, but each time you push one down, the room gets bigger, the space gets bigger, your perception gets broader. So, and if you're going to get addicted to anything, I got addicted to this stuff. Just pushing and discovering, pushing and discovering, pushing and discovering, and testing and testing and testing. And then learning how not to be afraid of the things that came after me once I started pushing the walls. Once I started even leaning against the wall, it show up. So, sorry, I wanted you to repeat what you had said. Can you hear? Is the connection okay now? Can you hear what I was saying?
Yes, I hear you. But you literally just said what I said. Okay. Like I've already had a connection, which is why I'm here. And I feel that way. Like I feel like my perspective has broadened since we've connected and since Nelly has tapped in to showing me, you know, the spiritual realm. So prior to us connecting, I felt that energy. I felt it before getting to this forum.
Mm-hmm. Good, good. And again, that has to do with your levels of sensitivity. Everyone should be as sensitive, really. That's literally what these being energetic consciousness is about. Our bodies are supposed to be more sensitive, to everything that's around it. And you are sensitive when, but it's almost like sometimes in the beginning it's kind of glitchy. So when I start working, I start clearing out all the noise. A lot of the clients, they become just basically consistent with their ability to empath, which means to pick up just like the energy waves that are floating around. Also pick up intent from other people, where you don't have to, do 101 questions. You can feel a person's intent. That's what language is about. Language is about relying on verbals or what comes out of a person's mouth, opposed to what you sense of the person. And a lot of people do sense things, but they're trained to not pay attention to it. So I sense that this person is not an honest person or a balanced person, but they have a game and they talk a good game to the point where they try to convince you, or they do convince people to not pay attention to their own awareness, their own sensitivity. Yeah.
Can I also test this question? With the neo-shamanic awareness that you share, consciousness do not have to go into the light, into processing again.
Oh, in other words, with the levels of awareness that I do teach, the whole idea of going into, we say have to go to light, they convince you to go into light. Really, when you pass on and you transition out, I believe that they convince you to go. Oh, we got a resistance. What's wrong? Okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of like going down, but which means that what I said isn't exactly on.
So that means that some people just go automatically.
Some go automatically. Some, I think, drag kicking and screaming.
Like the Joe Gardner guy.
Yeah, literally like the character of Joe Gardner. It's like, no, this, I'm not, no.
It's like, I'm getting an ominous feeling from that.
So, which rightfully so, I mean, that's why I agree with him not going into the light. It's like, that one, yep, Joe, don't go into the light.
The next question was, the awareness that you teach helps you to not have to go into, processing.
Yeah, because when I teach you have an idea, a better idea of what's on the other side. And you get that idea before you even get to the point where you transition. So that the whole concept of death is not, this overwhelmingly frightening thing. It's about transitioning from one vibrational expression to another vibrational expression. But with this awareness, you literally know there are places not to go, and also that there are those who are out there that you can actually trust in. And they're not going to tell you, oh, let's go to the light. Let's walk to the light. They will never take you into anything that has to do with the light. And what they have to show you is a hell of a lot more brilliant, and I can't even describe it. But we've done more sessions having to do with people who've transitioned, who passed on in the last couple of years. A number of them were my family members who transitioned over the last couple of years. And when I go in, I'm going in to make sure that they don't go back into the system. What about the COVID vaccine? Yeah, I think it was just the one who was basically, or who else was it? Okay. Yeah, there are times when A will tap into the consciousness of these individuals. At times they'll be in a coma or something, and call me to ask me if I can pull someone from the brink of death. Now, that's dicey at best, because by that time they're already got 1 foot on the other side. So the best I can do is just give them an idea of where to go and what to avoid and help them avoid, because I get in and out of there, quite easily. So when we talk about being ushered somewhere with a number of dense beings, sometimes Ms. A, she says she sees them as big and brawny guys, sometimes I see them as these shadowy, dark, shadowy type of entities who literally just, usually it's 3 for some reason, and 2 on the side, either 1 in front, 1 behind, or 1 in front who's leading, and 2 on the side. And again, the consciousness will usually be just kind of like, almost like sleepwalking or something, and they'll, will sleepwalk them into processing. I come in, and just as people see me delete density here during sessions, I go in and I delete the security force. And then we start to interact. Then I start to tell them certain things. If it's family members, I had some helpers go and try to help a family member, and she was, she wasn't happy because she didn't recognize them. And like right in the middle of a session, all of a sudden I get this almost like, the bat phone rings or whatever. What's up? What's up? Said she won't come. I said, well, she doesn't recognize, she won't come. You're going to have to go. So we get into it. Then I show up, and they recognize me, and they recognize my energy, my vibration, and then they'll come to me. So some of these individuals who had taken the COVID, one guy took it, and he immediately got ill, and and the next day, I think I talked about that on the forum. Yeah, but one of the clients called me to see if I could help him survive. But he was already over there and contemplating what he had done in this world. And we had this conversation, he wants to figure out who I am and all that, and so on and so. So we have this kind of conversation, acquainting ourselves, with one another, and then what I know about the realm. And he was definitely confused in the beginning, but as I talked, and then as those who were supportive on the other side came into view to support, he decided that, well, here is better than where where I'm leaving. So he decided he didn't want to come back. And at that same time, I was talking to, and he didn't even really know that I was working on it. It was this other client who wanted me to. And I told the other client, I said, look, I can go and try to see if they want to come back. But if they don't, I'm not going to put them in a headlock and pull them back into their bodies and then have them deal with this nonsense, because they got to on the other side and they knew the kind of stress and the difficulties of existing in this realm. So what did he say? He said, no, I don't want to come back. And at that time I said, okay, talking to the client, I said, he doesn't want to come back. And he says, that's really interesting. He said, because my sister, his sister, who was her father-in-law, just called and said that he just started telling everyone that he's leaving and to take care of the family, to his sons and all this other stuff. In other words, we had this conversation, and when he decided, and I said, it's only transition anyway, and also at this point, I know where to segue you to something where you don't come back into this crap.
And it was right at the moment of the session that he got the call from his. Yeah,
right at that moment he got the call, from the sister saying that, oh, he's resigning to the fact that he's leaving, that he's not going to struggle to hang on and stay here. And this happened a couple of times where someone's near their end and we have this interaction, and I discuss with them. I don't say, you need to come back, there's all these people who are depending on you and all this other kind of stuff, which is basically how density traps people into all kinds of things on this planet. Dealing with family, children, which is family, a number of things. and I don't know if any of you have had individuals pass or transition. Some folks who were suffering from the attachment called cancer, where they're just hanging in there and they're in pain and just hanging in there because they feel like they're letting someone down if they were to pass, but they're in extreme pain. You know, and they're just deteriorating, you know, anyway, they're eventually going to go. My mom's second husband, we talked about, you know, all these issues, and I said, well, you might need to tell him that it's okay. And so she did. She told me, you know, it's okay, don't worry about us, we'll be fine. You know, because I can tell you're in just really, you know, and the question would usually, it's like, I don't know how much, you know, longer I can stand this, you know, the pain that's going on in my body. She says, don't hang on for us. You know, it's okay, we can move. And that same day, generally, or that evening, the person would move. You even have that situation with your own father unit.
Yes.
Where, yeah.
Yeah, the night that he died, I was lying down and I saw this face come over me, and I was like, that feels like the father unit. And so I literally reached up and put my hand and tried to touch it, and I saw him jerk back really fast, like he was shocked that I knew he was there. And then he went to my sister and like hovered over her.
But I thought you said that you'd also had said something to the fact that it's okay.
Oh, yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I told him that he shouldn't, it's okay to move on. But I did it, I had to do it in a religious way, or else he wouldn't understand.
Because her father was a pastor, so that's one of the, you know. Yeah. So that does happen. Have dealt with individuals transitioning. And again, for folks who are just, you know, a lot of times when people want to hang on to someone who's suffering like that, it's usually selfishness. You know, like, you know, what did I do without you? What do I, you know, when in reality, you know, this person is you know, they've gone as far as they can, and they're just suffering, and so, you know, it's okay to just let them go. But anyway, lift this up again from the transition thing.
Okay.
What do we have? Sorry, what do we have in our next question?
Okay. So, do you think it was well, we already answered that. One of the questions was, do you think it was positive that Joe Gardner convinced Soul to want to live a human life? So we know that it's like a mind screw kind of thing.
Yeah, there wasn't a positive thing. And she did pretty much exemplify, you know, consciousness, but she had never had a human expressions in this movie. So, and I forgot what her reason was for.
She said, well, one of the weird things that they were promoting in this movie was that you can't touch things, which was really weird, because she was like, she enjoyed the concept of no one can touch you, which was really strange, because when you're on the other side, you can touch things, and you have an example of that in your book about touching things whenever you pushed your hand through the wall.
Yeah, when you're doing astral traveling or having an out-of-body experience, you're literally in that state that's floating between this realm and the other. At times, actually, I end up in what density calls the real realm. They consider where they're running around is the real realm, and this is the illusion or the hologram. And how they equate it is that they can see us and everything else that's out there that you may only feel and some kind of get a glimpse of. Because they know that everything having to do with these avatars that we have and in this realm is basically programmed and locked down so that you don't know that you're actually walking around in a realm like this. And that there's things that are, you know, who will walk through your room and so on and so forth, who can, you know, who see you, and they know that they can just walk in front of you, you know, through the room, and you won't see them. So again, it was the first time someone told me this, and I probably mentioned this one before too, was my younger sister, who sees a lot of different levels and dimensions, to the point where there's a dimension where there's, like, you know, we call ghosts, which is kind of like a halfway kind of point. where they can see you, but you don't necessarily see them. Again, unless you're someone who has that ability, which is literally, density calls it a glitch, because they don't want you to see anything, but because they're not really perfectionists, and that's one of the things also. Density loves to have you think that they're so thorough and they're such perfectionists and they have their stuff so together that you'll never ever, be able to get rid of density, because they have a system, but that system is wrought with flaws. And so when they tend to shoot themselves in the foot a lot, had a lot of experiences with dealing with clients or even dealing with them doing weird little attacks where they're trying to do something that's going to interfere, but because I radio think, I can move to this point over here and actually find even a much better opportunity than the one that they're trying to block. So that's literally how, in other words, so they got a lot of flaws in that system.
That's why there are such a thing as runners.
Yeah, well, that's how runners exist. They don't have it locked down to where anyone who's not been put into this realm or into the system, that's why they have these guys are runners. They're not perfect, and perfection isn't supposed to exist anyway, because if it's usually the concept of perfection means nothing else needs to be done. And this is a universe, an expression, spring consciousness expression, where you're supposed to always be expanding, always learning, always all these good things. So,
one of the things that the movie did show you, but it showed you in a twisted way, was that density doesn't like consciousness that don't want to have an expression in the in this lockdown realm. They call them troublemakers. That was truthful. They called 22 a troublemaker. But the reasons why 22 didn't want to have an expression were not what a consciousness who doesn't want to have this expression think about. The reason why they don't want to have expression here are for reasons that some of them, they know they've already been here and they don't want to be there again. That's one reason. Do you think of other reasons, Chief?
Well, other than, you go through a number of expressions, which they call lifetimes, and you realize that each one has nonsense. There was a person who had written a book, having to do with out-of-body traveling and running into individuals out on the other side who had transitioned out and decided that, they weren't going to, they're going to make it very difficult for density to get them to come back in. And it had to do with, they talk about, the devil will give you a promise, but you need to read the fine print or whatever. So they say, oh yeah, we'll get you, this particular expression, and you'll have all the money you want, and so on and so forth, or you'll become a great movie star or performer or something, and get all this attention. But they don't tell you what's connected to all that stuff. So they don't tell you that there's a dark side to all of these things that they're introducing you to. So even when I had someone I did an interview with who had lots and lots of money, he felt the best when he had lost all his money. He felt the most comfortable because he said with all the money that he had came all this stress. So also there are a lot of different ways that tricks are played on people who come into this realm and thinking that, oh wow, I'm rich, live in the mansion and so on and so forth, but the family's into the occult, into pedophilia, or they'll either be really wealthy but paralyzed, unable to walk and so on, or feeble health, period. So again, their system is always set up for you to basically be fed off of. And they can't feed off of balance and joy. It just doesn't work for them. Why doesn't it work? It just doesn't.
The reason why it doesn't work is because they're so low vibrational. If they take in a really high vibration, it will it it's too spicy, too high vibration for their low vibration.
Yeah, well, in other words, that's one of the, why they have a system where they have individuals literally milk the essence out of you, or they tire you over a certain amount of time, or your energy goes into like sort of like a reservoir that they feed from, that they filter. They have to filter your energy to a lower vibration in order for them to consume it. But again, as far as like them, why they consume, and also because their vibrations have been reduced to that level, because it's not like, they came in that way. Initially, they came in light, but went through various processes having to do when we talk about yin and yin, and those who remember, parts of that story, reducing them to something that this entity wanted, because this entity introduced the concept of feeding on other consciousness. And that's because he's freaking, back guano crazy, literally, to other experiences. We'll get to the book. We'll write, when we write the book, we'll put more, that information into it. So literally, all consciousness come in some balance, and and not as density, but have been reduced to that. So it's like a kid who, who's wide-eyed and, and naive about the world, and then like some of the guys I knew when I was in high school, and then they get thrown into Vietnam, thrown into a war zone, and see all this horrific stuff. And when they come back home, if they're if they're able to make it back home, they come back and they're totally different.
Because you're the one who taught me about, taught us about, like, in different forms, that the vibration was lowered, as low as it is for everyone. That's why when Chief, when you have a session with Chief, you feel lighter and lighter because of all the weight of the density. That's what makes your vibration lower and so low. This is the lowest vibrating expression in the universe.
Yeah, basically. Again, like I said, it's an anomaly. And it's something that took over a certain swath of what we consider space, but even with that swath, it's still just a small, fraction of the whole universe where this anomaly exists.
Do associates think it's an okay example to say that density is like a battery that can only hold so much voltage? If they were to try to consume something that's high vibrational, like, joy or what you were talking about from Supreme Consciousness universe, they would explode. It would just destroy them.
Yeah, well, I use the term that they would explode. So what it looks like may be an explosion, but it may be something else. But is that true?
Is that true?
But yeah. So literally, yeah, that is true. But the struggle for everyone who starts, begins with what I do is, how do I separate myself from something that is so, that I'm permeated with? In other words, this realm, everything I've learned, how I communicate, how I look at things, have been basically dictated to me by this realm, through schools, through family, through religions, through, media, and so on and so forth. And a lot of you have had experiences with things from the other side where there's not always something dense trying to get to you. There's some individuals who have some light beings who've been following them around, trying to see how to get them out of this quagmire. But with each lifetime, each expression, a person loses more and more and more of their connection to the source from which they came, which is Supreme Consciousness universe. So we have runners, as Ms. A had mentioned, who have avoided being segued, but they're trying to get someone that they had a close relationship with before all of this went down, trying to help that particular consciousness escape this. And we find that 9 times out of 10, those particular consciousness are extremely frustrated. One, they don't know how to get the hell out of here, but they can't figure out how, to actually extract someone that they actually want to help from the system and from, in other words, from this anomaly. Is that part of?
Yeah, I don't know, the visual comes up whenever you were talking to one of these types of consciousness who were a runner, but they were trying to help someone who was living in this realm. And you said it was like there's this storm of density swirling around this person, and they're like one little marble just bouncing off of all of that nonsense. And they were like, because they had been in this realm, they were influenced by the program of time. They were worried that this person would run out of time. They were worried about, they were worried. Worry is a program. And also, whenever he was like, he just became stuck in this loop of like, I have to save her, I have to save her, I have to save her. And we were like, hey, why don't you help yourself? And he's like, it was hard for him to even think about helping himself. It was like he was locked into this system, locked into this mindset of just helping this particular person.
When you talk about time, and I think if you go back to the movie, which is what we're supposed to be doing anyway, they put time in a way where they don't really talk about it, in the sense that you kind of feel that what's the guy's name, Joe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That he felt like his back was against the wall as far as time was concerned, for him to be able to, get this type of gig that he wanted to, in other words, the type of opportunity he wanted to have, playing jazz. And it seemed like, time was in there, even though they didn't mention it, that you have a certain amount of time to do something, which adds stress. In this environment, over the years, I've had women talk about their biological clock if they want to have children. So again, everything is based on something that's going to create a certain amount of stress. So, a woman wants to get, married or have a kid, but, she has to do it before a certain age, or else, there's going to be these problems with the kid and so on and so forth. Or she's just going to have problems and she won't fare very well, during pregnancy. And so with him, it had to do with him succeeding in a certain way within a certain time frame. Also, they had this thing having to do with him taking this job, teaching, opposed to doing something that he really, wanted to do as an artist. And that one, I don't have any problem, with how they show that the person should actually go for what they really want to do if they can, or situations when I was growing up, individuals wanted to do a certain thing having to do with arts or whatever, but they actually needed, you need to, resources in order to survive here, unless you're living off of someone else. And most people I knew wanted their own resources. So sometimes they have to make a decision whether to do something that they really want to do, or opposed to do something that they can do to make money, just to make money. Okay. I think I took that where I wanted to take it, but.
Oh, good. There's not any, we can ask them if they have questions.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to just, interject as those of you who have, because there's no problem with you just interjecting, because can't see because of the way the camera is, if anyone's raising their hands or anything like that. So with that, we're going to just go ahead and move to the next.
So the next question is to asking everyone, do you think that the movie Soul was insulting the concept of mystics or shamans or, etc.?
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have any perception, like that, those guys that were on that boat or whatever, who was supposed to be, helping souls, and anyone have any, opinion one way or another about that? Okay.
I think they're thinking.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, for me, I felt that it was a way of, did someone get that off? 1 second.
No It's okay.
Okay. That they were poking fun at the concept of someone dealing with the other realm. And this one guy is this kind of hippie guy who's supposed to be so knowledgeable about the other realm, and it's as though they were saying that if you're so into this level of mysticism or whatever he's supposed to be into, that generally they like to show them starving or living extremely modest lives, you know, where they're barely making ends meet, but they can do this, you know, amazing stuff. They can travel into the other realms and help souls, and you know, and there are people or whatever with their problems. So I felt like that, you know, that was a bunch of, you know, hooey. And whenever I've ever met anyone, I met a number of these types of people during the New Age thing, and they didn't know how to do jack, literally. So they have this guy who's this flake, but somehow he's in like this rebel who's abreast. Yeah, you know, it was just ridiculous. It didn't make any logical sense. And you know, it was just, they were just poking fun. They were just really trying to insult anyone who does any of that kind of work.
Because the example they gave was that they helped this one guy get his, I guess you would say, soul or spark back, you know, his soul back, and his soul jumps back into his body, and he's working at like an agency, or he's doing, you know, a brokering. I forget what type of job he had, but it had to do with, you know, crunching numbers and all that. And then he's like, what am I doing here? He's at work, and he literally he throws his computer off and starts banging up the room and throwing everyone else's computer off of their desks. And they literally made his life worse. He's gonna get in trouble for that, you know?
Yeah, right. You know, you end up with a lawsuit, and then you have to pay for all those computers you broke.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it had its share of nonsense, definitely. You know, and it is. I felt in the larger sense, it's more of a propaganda tool, and it's something that just to, you know, muddy the waters, so that, you know, if you, because, you know, there's no. Very few books. I just say my book tells you a lot more about what's going on. But yeah, anyway, we can move to that.
Okay. Lastly, there's a question: do you think just anyone can be a shaman?
Oh, yeah, right. I guess sort of tagging that on to the previous question. And no, when I became more public with what I was doing events, there would inevitably be someone who would send me an email or something asking me if I can make them a shaman. And my initial response is that shamans are you know, born, they're not made. But again, we've had, you know, muscle tests about, you know, how many real shamans and so on and so forth, you know, are on the planet. Again, that that word's been overused. And usually when people start to get into something that has to do with expanding their perceptions, the system will come in and they'll flood that with a lot of nonsensical individuals. I was being told about some guy who's supposed to be a shaman from Africa or whatever, and he's been, you know, on some shows, and the stuff he does is really weird. Some would say what I do is weird, but what I do is real. But if he can't answer a question, he says, I have to consort with the spirits. And something similar to it, you know, just simple, like the guy said, look, I have a weight issue. How do you think I can, or what do you think this stems from, or how do you think I can help myself? So I was like, okay, let's check it out. Let's, you know, maybe read your energy, so on and so forth. If I have to, we muscle test and so on, and we get an answer. This guy said, I have to consort the spirits over something as simple as a weight issue. So the system is behind these particular individuals who look the part, but they're making fun of it. And they're making light of it and saying, oh, look, this guy, you know, someone was saying that the guy was on another show and he's doing really, I don't know, kind of hand signals that didn't really mean anything. And still, it doesn't seem like he's proven that he can do anything. He just has this this persona. And that's what I ran into when I got more public, came more public. I didn't realize there was a so-called healing community in this city. Then I ended up running into these individuals, and they were literally some who had some ability, but still not enough to, they didn't even know what they were doing still, even with their ability to do what they could do. But a lot of them were just basically fakes, posturing and pretending. Some would grandstand and have a certain persona, and he's lying through his teeth, but because folks who are looking for help don't know anything, because this is the realm that doesn't want you to know that there's alternatives to medicine, and they say, well, if you go to these guys, you don't know what you're going to get. You're going to run into some quack. And a lot of times, they run into someone who's basically faking it. But these fakes, as far as I'm concerned, is literally like the Smiths putting individuals into positions where they can actually minimize a movement that the system doesn't like.
Also, these shamans, they always have fetishes where they rely on external energy. Chief doesn't rely on the external energy. He has all the energy he needs.
Yeah. Again, fetishes, all kinds of little, chicken shaker-rays and, and beads and all this other stuff, which is basically an external object, which actually can be an external consciousness. So, excuse me. Sorry about that.
Also, you give them tools at work.
Yeah, when I give you tools at work that you can actually use on your own. So we have more than our share of proof how containment works from the clients who actually started doing it correctly. And, once they can sense that it's working, it gets to be just this habit. They just keep doing it as it should be a habit. It should be as much of a habit as just, eating, breakfast or eating whatever every day or going to the bathroom. It should really be a part of your regimen. And some, even within their own minds, sometimes their little NCs will want them to think of, this is kind of ridiculous. I said, well, how many ridiculous things do you do that don't, come to any fruition, that doesn't improve anything in a person's life? And I tell them, I say, look, you don't have to do the physical every time, but I have individuals who are really hardcore, and they'll be at a restaurant, clearing that food and, and doing it. Sometimes people ask them, what they're doing, but they don't care because they know it works.
Just yesterday, we had someone submit a comment to us, and they said they're having a session today, and they said, since our last meeting, I don't have any attacks anymore, and I feel very powerful. And that's what Chief offers if you're consistent with your containment.
Yeah, this person was suffering from PTSD, from a really, really traumatic experience that lasted a good number of years.
They wrote a book about it.
Yeah, he actually wrote a book about it. And so he obviously, once he got out of the situation, he was suffering from it. But then things got better, and so he was able to function, enough to where he was able to function and start his business over again. But then it kicked in again in the last several months to this when PTSD, just this overwhelming fear and just feel like you're losing control. And there are things that are connected to it. There's consciousness connected to that. There are just the experience and memory that are connected, where things come in, they want that essence, they push that button, and next thing, this person can't see who's coming and pushing his buttons, but you can feel. I said, when you started to feel this PTSD rising again, was there something going on that seemed abnormal? That wasn't like, a family member calling and being weird, but stuff that seemed to be inexplicable. And he said, yeah. So having to do with, things, bumping around in his house and so on and so forth. But anyway, all that just to say that there was something that was triggering it because they wanted that essence. They wanted that type of vibration that terror that he went through had delivered to him. So, they push that button and they get he gets the rerun of the terror and the fear, of seeing people killed in front of him and stuff like that. So I worked on, I found the culprits primarily, and found that there were those in the grid who weren't even part of the thing, but they were coming and they were feeding because they saw that, well, he has this button that will release this type of energy. They would come in and they push that button, and he wouldn't know why all of a sudden he's just, he's struggling and he's having, these panic attacks, and his heartbeat is just racing for days. So anyway, all that to say, what is that all that to say?
It's a good segue, I suppose. Maybe we've already answered it, but a lot of times people will talk to you about being a shaman, and you said there's a very big difference, and you don't consider yourself a shaman, you consider yourself a Neo Shaman. Mm-hmm. Could you explain a little why is that?
Well, some time ago, while I was working in, I've been fortunate enough to have a number of people who can be considered psychics in my family. And every so often someone will call and they'll have some information. And so a few decades back, one of the family members called and said that someone wanted her to tell me something. They said that you are beyond shaman. And at the time I said, okay, well, I wasn't even thinking about shamanism or anything at the time. I was doing the work, but I never considered it as sense of shaman. It was like energy work and so on. And I recall asking her, the next week, I said, you remember you called me and you told me that someone told you to tell me that I'm beyond shaman? And she says, I don't remember any of that. Which meant that someone literally was channeling information. And somebody might have had experiences with people who channel some information. And sometimes that information will be something very helpful, but they won't remember telling you what they told you. So, I have that, information. I put it in my, my Rolodex with everything else, or my files, and I just keep doing whatever I'm doing. And eventually, as I kept expanding what I was doing, I found that I was moving into this certain realm where, my ability to actually tap into the consciousness and attachments on people and actually interact and, and release and pull them out. So when I pull things out that are dense, I delete them and make sure they don't come back. I don't, send them, on vacation so they can either harass someone else or come back, and then, set up their room again in your energy. But you were asking me as to, the name Neo Shaman came up because people were asking me what I do, and I couldn't define it because it wasn't Reiki, it wasn't, straight mysticism. It was just a totally different way of doing things, and a totally different way of looking at things, and in a totally effective way. So it wasn't just a theory. Before I came out with it, I knew it worked. So I wouldn't have to, at one point, I have to consort with the spirits, with this. So, can you handle this? Yeah, I got it. So I chose Neo-Shamanism. It came up in my mind as a term to describe what I was doing, which means I'm not a shaman. Because I don't use fetishes, I use just pure energy. And what I do with my clients, I teach them how to use their energy. I give you energy until your energy is up to the point where you can handle it, which takes a while, mind you. So with that, not having a straight out, name for it, but we have to have names for things, and I get it, how else we're going to communicate with us and all this talking if we can't, put a label to certain things. So that was a label that I chose. I did look up the name. I looked up on the web, to see if people were using it or not, and nobody was using it. So then I just said, okay, it's Neo Shamanism. And of course, now, 3 years later, this is like, so many people using the term Neo Shamanism, in various, different spellings and so on and so forth, which I literally just had to say, look, I have nothing to do with these people. Whatever they're calling Neo Shamanism has nothing to do with what I do. already branded myself with that name, so I'm not going to change, and use another name, which probably 3 years from this point, they're probably using that name. Because there are individuals who know what I do works. And some of those individuals are individuals who try to literally usurp the name and to try to connect themselves to me in some weird way when they're not connected to me at all. But anyways.
It's time to end the.
Oh, really? Is it? They didn't hear alarm go off.
I didn't set it so that it wouldn't
Okay.
interrupt your flow.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, as Ms. A says, end of this forum. I hope it was informative and enjoyable. So, anyway, thanks everyone for participating and for your donations and for contributing questions to the forum. It really makes it when people interact. And I appreciate everyone who actually spoke and shared their thoughts. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you. Good night.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye, guys.